talking with you today about increasing SAP user effectiveness and sustainment. This is part 2 in a 3-part webinar series presented by Teksoft Ventures. And before we get started today, I want to take just a moment to talk about the technology that we're using. On the next slide, you'll see a screenshot of the control panel, which is on the right-hand side of your screen. You can slide that control panel open and closed by clicking on the black or orange arrow in the upper left-hand corner. And you can use the control panel to submit a question to us at any time during today's web seminar by simply typing your question into the box and clicking send. And we will queue those questions up and then get to as many as possible at the end of today's session. And now I'd like to introduce our speaker today. Jan Konn is president of Teksoft Ventures, Inc., and is responsible not only for the overall direction of the organization, but she also works with many clients to help develop their strategic education programs and provide value to their enterprise. Jan's got over 22 years experience working with ERP systems, 17 years in the adult learning arena. She's led numerous ERP projects, including global SAP rollouts for Fortune 500 companies, public sector organizations, and mid-market companies. She's presented at the American SAP Users Group and various Wellesley Information Services seminars, and we're really happy to have Jan here with us today. I think you're really going to enjoy this presentation, and with that, Jan, I'd like to turn the floor over to you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. All right, as Mike said, this is number 2, or the second part of a 3-part series, and we're really looking at sustainment from a ERP, SAP perspective on how to really build this repeatable model, increase your in-house expertise, leverage tool sets, and putting a whole organizational change wrapper around this. So we've talked about some of these in the last session. I'll do a brief recap, but we're also going to kind of carry this forward. And really our whole goal and purpose here, folks, is to get some budget money, get some folks and some buy-in from your stakeholders and how important this is, this training, this continuous improvement, continuous training to support your mission-critical business applications, or in this case, your SAP system. So with that, we're going to look at pilot programs, something we didn't look at in the first session, and we're going to continue to build the business case using key metrics from research organizations like IDC as well as Gardner, etc. Okay, so what we talked about, a little recap in the first session was putting that OCM program. This has to be sold in the organization. You folks need to be the champions driving that to the organization, making sure that the goals of your training program are aligned with the enterprise-wide goals. Find your stakeholders, find your supporters and your coaches that'll help you spread the word here. We're going to look at current state, and to do that we're going to look at some of the different benchmarking techniques, and that's your as is. And then when you look at building your future state, hey, where do we want to be? What type of proficiency do we want? How do we test? How do we assess our users? How do we make sure they're learning? So how do we want this to be? What does it look like? And then we looked at best business as it relates to learning assets or your learning content. And we said there's 3 real key ingredients from a best business practice for your learning content. Number 1 is it must be easily accessible. And the easily accessible is the fact that we have all this information explosion, the digital universe explosion, where we've got just multiples of information that it's just growing. And, you know, when I look at some of the clients that we've been at, when I look at some of these quotes, and I'd love to tell you I'm making these up, but I'm not, and they say, hey, finding information in the solution manager is like taking on the largest archaeological dig ever recorded in history. We were at one client, they said, just go to SharePoint, it's in the enterprise folder, and when you go to that folder, it says it's moved to the other folder. You go to the other folder, and it says do not use. And that just, I mean, all of these assets that are everywhere, they're doing you no good, and probably some of you can relate to this one. Hey, this learning content, it's everywhere. It's on hard drives, network drives, flash drives, internet, SharePoint, possibly in the employees' attics. This is very common, and you've got to get those learning assets all squared away before you, and get your base and your foundation set up before you start deploying this. So we covered a lot of that in the last presentation, and if you did miss that last one, you can go to our website at www.teksoft.ventures.com and get into YouTube, and it is recorded. So we're also going to look at finding some more research metrics and developing our assumptions and then building our business case. We started to build our business case last time. We're going to continue with that same theme here. Okay, let's talk about benchmarking. You know, what we have to do here is certainly this is our as-is, this is our information gathering phase. And how do we do that? First of all, we can have interviews. If you're in a centralized location, you can interview managers, you can interview super users and users. The downside of that, it takes a lot of time. If you're in a dispersed and decentralized type of model or a global model, some of the things that we've done is we've done surveys. So we've had a different survey for the users compared to the super users and the managers. And something that's really, really critical here is making sure that the information you're getting back from these different constituencies, that there's a theme there, there's common threads, there's a theme. Because if you're getting very different answers with these different groups, you're going to have to dig in further to really find that root, because what you have is folks that have a different perspective or have, you know, don't really, maybe a couple of those groups don't truly understand what is going on. And you have to understand and get to the root. So if we look at just an example of a survey, what we can do here is just, you know, I'm amazed that you ask folks questions and they'll tell you everything. And, you know, valuing their opinion, obviously, taking this information, compiling it, and then acting on it certainly is very important. So you can look at some questions, and what I would do is, this is just in a Word document, is I would put this in a SurveyMonkey or a Zoomerang, and obviously have your results compiled automatically. But what we did is just look at this from a Word document at this point. So what type of initial training was delivered, how long it's been since they've received training, and then where to turn for help, etc. And I think here what you can do is you can start asking some open-ended questions as well as it relates to their job role. So you can look at more systemic situations like, okay, the average user hasn't been trained on process, it's only been their job role, or the average user hasn't had training in 3 years, and then start drilling it down into the individual job roles. And that's where you start to find the nuggets of the target of so you can target your training to address any of those challenges or issues that come up from a specific job role perspective. With this, you need the buy-in from the middle management, from the line management. So we need that support. We need to make sure we set expectations accordingly. And again, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with the SMART goals, and they've added the ethical part thanks to Enron, and then record what we can do as well. So we've got our smarter goals, and this is a great, just a great little cheat sheet of, hey, am I making my goals measurable? You know, have we really nailed down where we're at? Do we know where we want to be? We need a time frame to it. We need to make sure they're realistic. So the best thing I can do is say, you know, be conservative. You know, certainly over-deliver rather than the opposite, rather than setting the expectation too high, especially at the onset. Okay, some best business practices, a couple things that we covered last time. We talked about the learning content down here in building and leveraging your in-house tool expertise with context-sensitive help tools and tools like UPerform that are your electronic performance support system tools, and just to help build your content, help you with with standardization as well as easy access to that client via the context-sensitive help that those tools offer. We're going to go up here and we're going to look at people. And when I look at from a sustainment model, there's people that are more centralized at your center of excellence or your help desk or your solution center, whatever term you use for it. And then there should be some training resources there, and we'll talk about that, as well as your super users. And we're really going to get into the super user program. But initially, if we look at staffing, and I've seen lots of different models. I've seen anywhere from, this is an example where we have a training lead, we have a training developer, a coordinator, and the coordinator does a lot of interaction and coordinating activities with super users, as well as if you have any contractors. I worked with a global organization. They had 5,000 users. About 1,500 of them were core users. They had one training lead, and she was the gatekeeper. And they didn't have a context-sensitive help tool like a UPerform, but they did a great job with their internal website. They marketed it. They sold it to the organization, especially when they did a redesign. They made sure they had good information in there. There wasn't a duplicated noise. There wasn't unnecessary documentation either. And there was just one of her for all these users in a global environment, because what they did is they pushed some of the things that she did, pushed it down into their super user network. They had a tremendous super user network on a global basis, and we're going to talk about some of the attributes of a good super user network and why some don't work. But the thing is, you need that person that is that gatekeeper, that is that conduit from any type of process changes from the Center of Excellence. That training lead can communicate to that to the super users, start looking at which process improvement type of initiatives affect training, etc. So there's a lot of different models you can build in-house. If you're looking at this and saying, wow, this is too rich for my blood, then you're looking more at the training lead and, again, pushing down a lot of that responsibility and a lot of the functions down to the super user level. Okay, super users. I can tell you right now that any sustainment model with any type of ERP solution in an organization of any significant size, if you don't have a good super user program, you will not be successful. They are the conduit, they are the glue that holds together the users, that transfers the knowledge. They are not the first line of defense here, they are the first line of support for the users. They must have a positive attitude, be a representative for the department, representing the department as well as the process team. They have to communicate effectively, and then here be an outstanding trainer. Now, I've worked with large super user organizations where they had super users that did training. Then they had super users that maybe weren't very good in front of a classroom, but they were great working with folks one-on-one because they wanted to help people. That works too. It depends on your size and the critical mass, how many super users you have. So if you can afford that and just take people's skill sets and accentuate their positives, put them in those roles, that will work well for you also. They need to be involved in continuous improvement. If there are folks on the phone that are going through a new implementation, the earlier you get your super users involved during the blueprint phase, the better off you are as it relates to, again, your as-is and your to-be. I've been in situations when they brought in the super users, but not until train the trainer, and the super users actually found a lot of process gaps. And then to complicate matters further, once the international super users came in, they continued to see more process gaps. So I think you see that a lot in the new implementations, but also in the process improvement. If the super users are not involved in the design of it, they are the guys that are on the front line, and they certainly understand process, and I think in my opinion, their input is invaluable. They also, depending on their role here, must have the ability to document processes. And, that includes training content. So like that one organization that didn't have all the support to create and update documentation at the Center of Excellence level, they pushed it down to the super users. They had very strict standards and templates, The super users were empowered and they did a great job. They would send it back. It would go through a review process like the Change Review Board. It would go to the Center of Excellence folks that were in charge of that functional area, and then the training gatekeeper. Then it would get uploaded into their intranet site. Obviously, they must have the SAP knowledge and be positive. Why super users initiatives fail? I could probably list a client for every one of these. One of the most important ones is that governance model. I've actually interviewed super users that didn't know they were super users, or super users that became super users by default because the other super user or super users left their position or the organization. And there's just no governance, etc. A client that we worked with, they were a global organization, and they would do, they would have a super user call every month. They would have it sometimes at midnight Eastern time in the States to accommodate the folks over in Asia Pac. So it's all about inclusion, it's about empowerment, and it's about some structure and governance. And there's a lot that goes along with that governance model, like what are the expectations. So we were at an engagement where the super users, they were going to work part-time. Well, what does that mean? And try to get alignment from the business, buy-in from the business as well as HR, as far as how many hours a week is a super user expected to spend doing those job duties. If you have an expectation of, let's say, 5 to 10 hours a week, and then it's not part of their performance measurement, you have a broken system. You have to get that in there as part of their performance management and their performance measurement. If there is no criteria, these got to be your best people, and your users know who the best people are, and there's a natural inclination to go to the best person because they're the ones that have the knowledge. They need to be your super users. There's no recognition program. Now, a lot of folks will say, well, you know, that's anti-cultural. We don't give incentives. Well, you don't have to give monetary incentives, but there has to be a recognition. There has to be some press about when somebody gets elected or gets nominated to be a super user. There has to be a criteria, and there should be a certification process. Again, you know, we don't go to college and go to all these classes without getting that degree. They need to be certified. Your super users need to be certified. Okay, pilot programs, and going from a little bit on the benchmarking, finding out what's going on out there, to who can really help you execute this, your people and your super users, power users or champions, whatever term you use in your organization. Now we say, okay, great, we've gotten our OCM down, we've been advertising this, and now how do we make that great first impression? And we talked last time about a vehicle called BrainShark, and BrainShark is kind of like a link that you can have audio and lead somebody through. It could be a task, it could be a high-level information, and you can send out a link instead of sending out a newsletter. So it's much more dynamic. And another little program, and I call this a cool tool, and the definition of a cool tool is that it's free. It's on the internet and it's free, and it's something called Extra Normal. It's www.extranormal.com, and you can use these in a couple ways. You can use these for your e-learning, and you can use these as informational. So one of our clients took these Extra Normal videos, 2-3 minutes, and said, okay, we're going to announce that we're doing a brand new T&E program. It affects thousands of people. This is a Fortune 500 organization. It affected thousands of people in their organization. And how do we get the word out? Oh, people don't read their emails. A lot of people don't have emails in the organization, so that you have to address those as well. But what we can do here with Extra Normal, and this might be a little faint, and this is, I'm probably not going to play the entire video, but what it is that it's free software that you can do cute little videos. You can make them cheesy, you can make them serious. and it's a cartoon. Whoops. That.
Hello, Jack. I'm glad we are taking a break at this point in the course. I've been thinking about some of the concepts we just learned in the first lesson of our basic navigation course. Oh, really? Is there anything you're unclear about? Well, I understand why the Commonwealth switched to Chris. But what I don't understand is what SAP has to do with Chris. That's a great question, Jack.
Okay, so really what they're talking about, they're in their navigation class, they're going to talk about what's the relationship of SAP in their version, as well as they're going to talk about what the difference is between a portal user as well as a GUI user and what those mean. So it reinforces the training. This can also be used as messaging throughout the organization to say, listen, we've got this new T&E program rolling out. Oh yeah, what do I do? How do I find out more about it? And you know, you've got it, the old build it, they will come. You need to engage these folks, and these kind of tools help to do that. And again, I've never worked with a client that says, wow, it's free, it must not be worth anything. These are good, these are really good tools. So some of the things that you can do, call it a program, call it initiative, but some of the first things out of the gate is looking at some quick win deliverables. And one of the things we did with a client in the mid-market is reporting was an issue. And for all you folks that have implemented, you're going to probably be shaking your heads because that typically is one of the biggest concerns and challenges of new users. And what they did is we removed all of the you perform documents or the BPPs that had anything to do with reporting. And what we did here is we created role-based reporting guides. So this is just an example of at a client. And what you have here is you have your transactions. You could put in your, I would use this report for, so put in a little process information, what the suggested criteria is, and any expected results. So what's really great about this, and what this does, is it does some aha moments with some of your users. They'll look at this and they'll say, oh, VA05N, what is that? I've never seen it. Well, that happens to be a report that's not even on the menu path. And they get into this report and they say, wow, that's a great report. I've never used it, and I've been looking for this. So people love this stuff. They love the cheat sheets, the job aids, the quick reference guides. It's something they can refer to, they can keep. It's great performance support material. We have gotten a whole lot of mileage out of these role-based reporting guides. Role-based, not all the reports in materials management, but hey, if I'm an inventory handler, here's the 6 reports I need to access. If I'm in general ledger I'm accounting, I'm going to access these 25 reports. The other thing is some pocket guides, and these again are just little quick, 1-page, 3-part, and this is just a client that, how to set up their printer. This is just an overview, but again, it could be anything you wanted it to be. It could be really high-level, sophisticated search in using the possible entries and the F4 keys and how to put in the placeholders, etc. So it could be anything that you want to be, but just something nice, quick, real quick hits of information. And you also here is delivering a webinar for some advanced navigation or an e-learning. Again, something that is a quick hit that a lot of folks will partake in, doesn't take up a lot of time. The last thing is, we look at simulations for complex transactions. The other thing that I really recommend highly in a sustainment model is to test before and test after, so you can really get your deltas. If you don't test before, obviously you don't have that benchmarking. I think that is much more important in the sustainment mode than it is in a first go live, because their base is pretty narrow. Their knowledge base is pretty narrow in a new go live. Again, another cool tool, and the cool tool is something called ProProfs. And I'm losing my mouse here. Okay, this is it's PROPROSS. And what this is a quiz maker, and it does the scoring for you. And it's free, but it's much like your Zoomerang and your SurveyMonkey, where your base is free, and you've got, you know, to buy extended reporting capabilities, etc., you have to pay for it. And you can set up your tests in a lot of different ways, and I'm just logging on now. But what you can do here is Bronx Bombers, etc., and next, and just set up the questions however you'd like. SurveyMonkey doesn't have all of this, so what I like about this is it does all the testing for you, the scoring. You can choose how you want to score. The research findings here, this again is another slide that can help you build your business case that you would present to your the folks that approve budget. What percentage are operator errors here, and what's application failure, which is all part and parcel to these operator errors. And this is all part of Gartner. And then here we're just going to look at some key assumptions. So we're now, you know, we're building our assumptions. We have 1,000 core users for our business case. And so we can start costing this out and getting some quantifiable measurements to it. We're costing this out, our average user out at $40 an hour. With cleaning up our database, we are now able that for 10% of these users or 100 users, we're going to reduce 18 minutes a day because they're going to spend less time looking for stuff. They're going to have a higher success rate. They're not going to get frustrated because they can't find what they're looking for, because we're cleaning up the whole content repository, be it in UPerform or InfoPack or an intranet site, and we're putting all the materials, making sure that they're all up to date, all in one spot. And then each hour of training per Gartner yields 4 net hours of productivity. So very quickly here, and you know the slides will be available, but I don't want to spend time on the math, but this is really what our opportunity is, what our solution is. We're going to do a variety of solutions. We're going to make sure that our context-sensitive help is there, that we've cleaned up our database. We might create some simulations. People like simulations. They appeal to many different learners. And look at some developed job aids and how many folks it's going to affect. Very conservative. We're only going to affect 10% of our 1,000 core users. We're going to reduce our search time by 50% or 18 minutes daily for those 100 users. Okay? We're, again, being very conservative in our assumptions. Our next assumption, we're going to do some e-learning. Okay, so and our e-learning is going to be an initial SAP e-learning navigation class where we have X amount of new users, and here's our cost savings at $12,000. So we have our cost savings here on the first slide of $288,000 and then $12,000. What we haven't done yet is attach our cost side to that savings side, which we're going to do in the next part. So what we focused on here was benchmarking, getting your as-is, knowing where the low-hanging fruit is, knowing where training can truly make an impact and a difference. People and technology. Technology's everywhere. The people piece, the super user, critical. It's not just the best business practice, but it's certainly a critical success factor to make your program successful. Sample pilot programs, talked about some little quick wins, visibility, selling the program with either your Brain Shark or Extra Normal, getting the word out. A couple more research metrics, and then developing assumptions, and then we continue to building our business case. So in the next part, we're going to attach some cost to the business case, add some more ways you can build your business case and quantifying those. Okay? Questions?
Well, thanks very much, Jan. And we do have some questions that have come in from the audience, but before we get to them, I just want to remind everybody that if we aren't able to get to your question today, or if you have something you'd like to reach out to Teksoft for, contact information is on your screen, 708-301-0003. You can also visit teksoft.ventures.com or email Gary Remersma at Remersma, R-I-E-M-E-R-S-M-A, at teksoft.ventures.com. And with that, We'll get to the first question that's come in. Jan, this question asks, what has the ratio of super users to users been in your experience?
Oh, okay. That one's a great question. Initially, it should be anywhere from 1 to 10, 1 to 20 users for your initial go live. Sometimes the numbers get skewed if you only have 5 people in receivables or 7 people in payables. And if you're small distribution center or plant organizations. So sometimes it seems like there's more coverage than not. When you go into a sustainment model, again, it varies anywhere between, 1 to 20, 1 to 50. I've even seen numbers a little bit higher than that. So you kind of have to look at your organization and always have a backup, always have a succession plan as it relates to your super user program.
Well, thanks very much, Jan. Here's another question that just came in. Can you give an example of quantifying the value of training?
The examples at more the enterprise level are a couple of the ones that we just covered. If we look at something like as it relates to a role, there was an organization that we worked with that they had to input the profit center, which is their line of business. All the customer service workers did. And what happened was they didn't understand the importance of that field, and that's where your revenues go for your line of business, and that's invariably where your product managers or your vice presidents of product lines are compensated on. And what was happening is every month there was a user in centralized accounting that had to reclass all of these errors that were made for the incorrect profit center. Because at this organization, they did not derive the profit center automatically. So what we did is we went in and we did a 4-hour class, and it was the light bulbs turning on in the class. They didn't catch it the first time around during the initial training. We put all this fire hose routine into these users because we can't take them out of the business, and we've got to train 3 days of material in a day and a half, and sometimes that's kind of the collateral damage of it. So once we explain the importance of the profit center to them and the light bulbs went on, that saved this organization, this person in centralized accounting, about 3 to 5 days a month in doing reclasses. And so if you take that out and extend that out to a year, that's anywhere from, fully absorbed, anywhere from a $70,000 to a $90,000, $100,000 savings, and we could quantify that. That was a very easy one to quantify. Not to mention the folks that the VPs of these product lines and these product managers that were now getting accurate P&L statements.
Well, thank you very much, Jan. Really appreciate that. We are at 33 minutes, and it's a little bit longer than we wanted to run, so we're going to wrap up. Again, if we weren't able to get to your question, or if you have additional information you'd like to get from Teksoft, please feel free to reach out. Contact information is on your screen. Again, phone number 708-301-0003, or you can contact Gary Remersma, RIEMERSMA, at TeksoftVentures.com. We thank Jan for presenting today, a really excellent presentation. Of course, thank Teksoft Ventures for sponsoring today's webinar. And we thank all of you for being here with us and look forward to seeing you at a future Teksoft Ventures webinar very soon. And with that, we wish everyone a great afternoon.
Thank you.